So now we're going to talk about some of the challenging counseling situations, which I'm sure many of you have experienced already in the past. So male client who won't shake hands with a female counselor or vice versa. A client who has body odor that you can smell. A client who is consistently and significantly late. A client who doesn't do any of the work that you assign to them in between sessions. Client whose language skills do not match their technical skills. So these are counseling problems, situations that many counselors run into. So I've run into those problems as well. What I found is, I found that if you go straight into the issue, it usually doesn't work because people don't see the problem the same way. So the approach that I've kind of developed went like this. First, I want to validate my understanding of their goals. I want them to say that, yes, I understand what they're trying to achieve. Why is that? Well, I find it's the probability of people implementing the change you want to recommend to them will be much higher if you tie the change you want to recommend to them to their goal. If you're trying to help them achieve their goal, and you tell them, well, you need to change in this way, the odds of them making the change is much higher. So I want to really understand what is their goal, and I want them to say, yes, you understand me. You understand what my goal is. After that, I often ask them, well, how is your behavior tied to your goal? How will people interpret your behavior, your approach, what you said, things like that. Once people say that, then I tell them how people actually interpret it, or what is likely to happen. Once we've done this, we can discuss, well, what could you do that would get you to the goal, and you can do it. Because sometimes, like the person, you recommend a course of action, and no, they can't do it. The final step for me is critical, and it's it's the one I found the hardest as a counselor. It's like, let the person make a final decision. It's not your life, it's not your career, they have to decide. My goal as a counselor is to make sure they make an informed decision. They may make a decision which is not the one I would have made if I were in their shoes, but hey, that's the way it is. Okay? At least they understand what's likely to happen. Make sense to everybody? Mm-hmm. Okay. So I want to encourage you to think of this as you tackle these situations. So let's do it again, small groups like we've done before, okay? And we'll come back together as one big group. Well, which one would you like to start with? Like, which one have you experienced the most? For those of you who do counseling. I'm sorry? Number 4? Okay. So how do you manage that, typically? Well, I mean...
I thought that we should do it together.
As a group?
Yeah.
Well, I mean...
Okay, so... you asked which ones I have
so good. Well,
so number 4, right?
Yeah, so how would you... what did it look like and what did you do, typically?
So, when I'm faced with a client who doesn't want to do anything, like any related job, and refuses, then my approach is completely different, right? And then first time I'm okay to help, right? And I give all the links, information, and any assistance that I can provide. The second time I can understand as well, right? In a way that, okay, it happens, please take time, go back and do more research. But if I see there is no action on the third meeting, then my approach is completely different. And not that I let it go, but then I'm not as interested, and my approach is just similar to his, right? Like, I would say it is up to you now. I advise that it's to your benefit to complete research and to do some work, but I see no effort on your side. So now I leave it up to you, and when you're ready, just come back to me, and that's it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Not always work, but yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean,
it happens many times. The number
Yeah.
4, you got it right. That's one. That's the common problems that
it is. Yeah,
that
it
we
is.
have.
It happens. Yeah.
And in order for us to avoid it, we have before the session starts, we always have this like template that we check.
Oh,
So
yeah.
at each meeting, we have a goal.
Yeah.
So we do action planning for the time frame that I have given with them.
Okay.
So the first initial one, most of the time, I deal with their job log templates.
Okay.
To show that they're really looking for jobs.
Yeah.
That if I ask them, oh, okay, so you're looking for this particular field, we did all the work already, we did the assessment, the specialization, and all those kind of things. If did resume, cover letter, and then when the job search issues, he was like, they're always waiting.
Yes.
So then that's the time that I really step on the
Yeah.
job log template. But at the beginning, yes, I will give them a little bit because they're adjusting too, right?
Of course.
They're adjusting too.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the drive, the adaptability, that comes into portion
That's right.
when we're dealing with them. But whenever I deal with them, I always go back to the plan that we
Yes.
have initiated on the first meetings that we have.
So yes, drive is clearly one factor there. The other one is the sense of ownership. Do I expect the counselor to give me a job, to find me a job, or do I expect to learn how to find myself a job? So that's why I like to describe it as I teach people how to find themselves a job. I'm not going to find you a job, because that is not possible. So the sense of ownership is really critical, is one element. Another element can be, well, I remember this one guy, he was from Romania, he was a mechanical engineer. I mean, he was delivering pizza in like 14 hours a day kind of thing. And so he was doing that all the time, and he was not doing any of the work that was related to his job search. And every time we met, oh yeah, I'm going to do it, and it's like nothing happened. And essentially what you said, Anita, like, 3 strikes you're out kind of thing. Like after, like, once the trend is established, well, it's kind of, so that one important element is, how do you think that's going to play out in the workplace? Because if you're a professional, then your manager will not expect to be involved in your work to that extent. And so bringing it back to, I find it's very helpful to bring it back to what is going to happen in the workplace if you behave like this. Now, people will tell you, well, I won't behave like that there. It's like, okay, great. Well, show me that you can behave differently now, is another element. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that one I find quite challenging to manage. Like, I mean, for myself, because that is where I find, like, well, if you really want a job at the professional level, you will have to behave like a professional. I mean, that's just not possible otherwise. Yes? Okay. It's like, yeah. Frank?
I had one case that the client behaved in that way.
Yeah.
And because before start getting the mentorship, we sign a contract and we put everything
Yeah.
up front. And because he started behaving in that way, so I bring that up, and I took that to my manager at Craig.
Yeah.
And he said, it doesn't work, and we finished the contract.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay. Which other situations have you experienced?
5.
Okay. So what did you do? Like how did yes.
Okay, client whose language skills do not match their technical skills. When they have filled up the employment expectations form, so I call it that, what they expect for as their employment to be, and then they base it on their technical skills.
Yeah.
When I start using the languages that they're using in their industry, they don't know.
Yeah.
And at the same time too, they have comprehension, and they have problems. I don't mind the accent actually, because I was like that before. But the point is the comprehension. If it has something to do with your job, you have done this job. the questions that I've been asking is different. Is you're not really answering the questions. So when that happened, then I have to tell my clients directly that I know that in your home country you may have worked this, but if that will be your language skills, then you will not be able to work in this industry.
Yeah.
So directly, I don't, and then so it's either we make some efforts to improve your language skills
Yeah.
and do some planning regarding that, or you think of another job that fits you right now.
Yeah, that require lower,
Lower
like, levels
English,
of language
lower
skills.
English.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, because the thing is, they think that because they managed to do it,
Yeah.
and they said, "Oh, I can wing it." Like, I have this one that said an
No.
IT person that said, "I can wing it with my technical skills. I don't have to talk to clients." No,
Yeah.
it's not that. So, yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, this I experience. That is a big challenge. There are situations like these where I've told people, if I were you, I would pack my bags and go home, because the speed at which you will develop your language skills, it will take you so much time. You're starting from so low that you're not going to get that. Your technical skills will become obsolete by the time you learn English well enough. Yeah. So I'm not suggesting you recommend that to people. That's not the point. Okay? But there are times when it's like the person. Yeah, it depends on the level. Like I remember this one guy who was from China. He was doing research in some a large oil and gas company in China, like in their research center. And I was thinking, and his English was really, really difficult to understand, and it was comprehension problem as well. And it's like I really told him, you've just arrived 6 months ago. Your English is terrible, and you were working at a very high level back home. It's going to take you so much time to learn English to get to the point that you can do the kind of work you used to do in China. By that point, your technical skills will be obsolete. Then it's really going to be a miserable life kind of thing. So there are some people can improve their language skills quickly. It does happen. Yeah. And the other thing that can happen is some people will make the choice to look for a kind of job that does not require as high language skills. One situation I remember, one person was, so the same thing. This guy was from China. He was a mechanical engineer in China. Came to Canada and figured English. No, I can't do that. It's not going to work for me. So he became a mechanic in a shop owned by a Chinese guy. So he doesn't talk to clients. The clients are Chinese speaking anyway. And he talks primarily to the owner who speaks Chinese. So problem solved for him. And there's nothing wrong with that. As long as the person accepts the limitations that this choice makes on their career. Because that's the part which is important. If people still want to get in higher positions, but they're not going to learn the language, then something it doesn't add up. If the person understands the limitations that their choice puts on their career, then no problem. Then it's their choice, right? Other questions or comments on this one? Anyone?
Just on number 5.
Yeah, go ahead.
So our profession, accounting, has been benchmarked by CLB, so that's a fallback. If the person is an immigrant and their CLB scores are low, you can say you have to be at a 10 to even start the CPA or finish it.
Yeah.
And to work proficiently, you need to be at like a 12. How big is your gap to get there? So I don't know if that's the case for all of your clients, but it's a fallback. If they're not responding to what you're saying, you can always just go on the CLB score too. That's
a great one, yeah. I have to look up what it says for engineer, because I think the benchmark engineer too low, yes, in my experience. 7, 8. Yeah, 7, 8. I was like, 7, 8. There's no way you can, in my experience. Yeah. As a professional, 10 sounds like exactly right to me. Because because as a professional, your value is not what you make. It's not the number of widgets you make per hour. It's the value of your ideas. If nobody understands your ideas, how much value do you bring? Zero. Again, that is the key challenge for many professionals. Yeah. Well, let's go to number 3, because that's kind of correlated to the previous 2. Like a client who's consistently and significantly late. So one important thing obviously there is you don't change the end time of the appointment. Don't let it slide, because otherwise like you're creating problem for others. Yeah. And again, one key element is what's going to happen in the workplace.
Exactly.
Because if you, like people will say, well, for the job interview, I'll be on time. It's like, well, show me. Because you need to be consistently on time. This is the part which is really challenging. Because being there once on time, yeah, that's one thing. But being consistently on time is really the challenge. And that part, again, we come back to, as a professional, that will be a basic expectation. If you don't meet that expectations, then you will be called unprofessional. I mean, I'm not going to tell the person to be on time. I won't accommodate their schedule. But the key part is, well, it's their choice. They have to decide how they're going to manage it. If they decide to continue to manage it this way, well, it's like this will have consequences on their careers long term, because it will limit your options significantly. You know? Let's talk about number 2. Anybody? Yeah? Yeah? Go ahead.
So for the second one, yeah, I haven't had client who had a very bad body odor, but yeah, I wouldn't know how to go about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
It sounds like you've had that situation. You've dealt with it already. Yeah.
Men and women alike, yes.
Oh, right. Okay.
I have dealt with the body odor of our clients. The thing too is it's where they're coming from. I dealt with refugees as well,
Yeah.
and skilled workers. So for those who were coming with a body odor, at first it was a sensitive issue, but we have this scent-free sign.
Yeah.
In our
office,
in
yeah.
our office, and I show it to him. What do you know about this sign? And I was like, I'm not wearing perfume. That's what he said.
Yeah.
That's what this guy said. The scent is perfume, right? I said, it's all kinds of smell. That's what I said.
Okay.
It's all kinds of smell. Whether it's by perfume, you're baiting on perfume, whether it's coming from your body odor. I said, have you know about the body odor type? And it's like, and then he's giving me, I have a hard time for the man. For the woman, it's easier for me. Mm-hmm. Because
Yes.
For men, clients, I have a hard time acknowledging that they have body odor. So I said, it's just that we have met so many times already, and one of the things that I have to point out to you as a counselor is your hygiene.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm not saying that you're not taking a bath. I'm not saying anything about that. But here, hygiene is very important, especially with in interviews. Mm-hmm. Interviews are being held in a closed door room. Sometimes it's airless too.
Yeah.
And if you have a body odor, it's one of the negative. It's a disadvantage that you can control. Actually,
Yeah.
you can rectify that. So it's either you pay attention to your hygiene, or we. Because I said to him that the reason we have that in the room is because I'm allergic. That's why.
Yeah.
So I said to him, or I have to refer you to another client.
Counselor.
So that's what I said. The
Yeah.
first time, I have a hard time with the mail. I have already been complained because I'm very picky. They said, and I shouldn't be because we're non-profit. But I was telling her, I'm not turning down.
Yeah.
I'm just giving.
Yeah.
And it's just an advantage too.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Newcomers accept or accept it, or accept or not accept it. You cannot do anything about it. But the thing is, as a counselor, you have to be very direct to them
So-
when it comes to them. I think choosing words like
You
hygiene.
tell them no one's going to tell them.
That's very
Yeah.
true. That is a fundamental point, yes. If you don't tell them, like somebody, they need to know.
Yes.
Because if the recruiter can smell you at the beginning of the interview, what happens? Whether it's positive or negative, whether it's perfume or body odor or smoke, like, or, cannabis, like it's going to be an interesting one. And what's the other? Oh, cooking smell is another one.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. If the recruiter can smell you at the beginning of the interview, you have lost the job.
Yeah.
And I've seen, for example, I've a number of French men and Iranian men have lost jobs because they went to a job interview with too much perfume. And like the person could smell them. And all the recruiter could think of is, how can I terminate this interview as quickly as possible? Okay. Ona, you were about to say something.
I was just going to add on the body odor aspect that yes, definitely personal hygiene, but sometimes it could be a medical issue. So
That
also
does
just
happen.
encouraging the client to maybe just go to a clinic or whatever, because there could be an underlying medical issue as well.
That does happen. So a number of organizations have the steps to the process.
Yes.
One is it can be addressed in groups. So it's not about one person in particular. Some people will understand, some people will not at that step, at that stage. Okay, but at least, you've removed the certain percentages of cases that you have to deal
I'm
with.
just going to add something on that one.
Yeah.
Because we have so many issues regarding body odor, during the initial orientation, we give them hygiene packs.
Yes.
Yeah, all of the students
Yeah,
gets
yeah,
hygiene packs,
yeah.
men and female,
Yeah.
with everything on it.
Yes.
Yes.
And yeah, one challenge is, yes, we live in enclosed areas all the time in Canada. Whereas I'm sure if you've been to the Caribbean, you've seen all the buildings have pillars but no windows, no doors. It's like the wind just comes in all the time. So if you have a smell, the smell will dissipate very, very quickly. Whereas here, the smell is recycled constantly within the building, and it just doesn't work. So that is one element. Okay, I know when my daughter went to Peru, she didn't wash nearly as much because there was no hot water. So that could be another factor. Obviously, here we have hot water, so use it, kind of thing. One element is a number of immigrant servicing agencies have used kind of designated heaters, so people who are not uncomfortable dealing with the issue, and usually there'll be one man and one woman, because exactly what you said, it's much easier to deal with it with someone of the same gender as you than somebody of the opposite gender, and that becomes a little more challenging. It needs to be addressed. There's no question about it, because that is definitely one that people will not want to touch. Okay? If the recruiter can smell you, you lose the job, but the recruiter will never tell you you didn't get the job because you smell. Again, that is guaranteed. Okay? And it is a big deal. I'll always remember, so this was one of the accounting firms I worked with. So accounting firms in Canada tend to bring a lot of people for what they call busy season, which is the first quarter of the year, like January, February, March. And so I remember this guy, he was brought from India in the Halifax office of this firm. And now it was a triple whammy, to use it. He smoked, he had body odor, and he had cooking smell. His coworkers gave him a desk in front of a window with the window open, fan blowing the air out, but nobody told him what the problem was. The coworkers talked to the coach talked to HR called Global Mobility, and Global Mobility called me to deal with it. So it gives you an idea of how uncomfortable the average Canadian is in dealing with that issue. Okay? And so it is really, so this is where one of your coworkers in Brampton said that the question she uses, and I think it's a really effective question, it summarizes the essence, if there was something that I was aware of, and I know it will prevent you from reaching your goal, and I know you don't know, would you want me to tell you? Okay? So, if there was something I knew you don't know that will prevent you from reaching your goal, would you like me to tell you? It's the goal becomes very obvious. I want to help you. I have something to tell you that I know may be uncomfortable, but I believe it's in your best interest to know about it. You see what I mean? Okay? This is why connecting to the goal of the person becomes so important. Because if I take the example of perfume, people wear perfume for a positive reason. They want to smell good. The problem is the impact they have is not the impact they want to have.
They bait on it.
Yeah, it's too much. In many cases, it ends up being too much. It's like the impact they have is not the impact they want to have. Okay? So, the other thing is, it really makes a world of difference. People need to know, because otherwise they cannot change if they are not told. Okay? And this one, so how do we manage situation number one? I remember, I think it was in like Brampton or Mississauga, there was one lady who said she had a client who sat with his back to her. Okay? And she said she made the decision, she wanted to turn that person around, literally and figuratively speaking. So how do you help people see the challenge that they're facing in that case? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, so for men coming into the workforce in the accounting profession is 52% female. You may be reporting up to a female executive.
Yeah.
If that is not a situation that is comfortable to you, you're going to have to find a different profession, quite frankly. The one I've encountered that I feel was kind of legitimate was religious reasons for not shaking hands across genders. The person just explained it up front, and that was okay.
Yeah. So key point there is, remember, do you expect others to adapt to you, or do you adapt to them? Yeah. So if your behavior clearly indicates like, I want to integrate, I'm not expecting you to accommodate me. Mm-hmm. Yeah? We won't shake hands, but I don't make it like it's your problem. Yeah. That's the key part. Because if you make it like it's their problem, the odds, like exactly as you say, like this will create so many issues in the workplace. Organizations will not want to tackle this one. Mm-hmm. And the simplest way to not tackle it is not hiring the person. Yeah. Yes? Let me give you,
I have one of my clients attend an interview, and the employer is a male.
Yeah.
Okay, a male employer, and she didn't do handshake. She do handshake like this.
Yes. Okay.
And then the employer look at her hand and then wipe it and then do it again. And I was watching because I'm on the other side, and I was just like doing this because I never expect that from her because she was handshaking me.
Yeah.
I never expect that she will not do it to
a guy.
male.
Yeah.
It kind of slide from my notice. So when we do the feedback, I found out that they're not in their culture. They're not allowed to do physical contact with male.
Yeah.
And with men at all,
Yeah.
especially if they are not family, if they are not anything at all. So I was just like, okay. So we cultural difference again. And then I have to tell to her, in Canada, so this is going to be a problem if you're not going to do handshake for some employers.
Yeah.
Like what you see, the employers really look at his hand and wipe it and then do it again, right? So it's important here because that's their way of saying hello.
Yeah.
If you cannot trust them at the beginning of the interview and you cannot accommodate culture in the workplace, then it's something they were not going to say you're not ready to work.
Yeah, see, it will create a lot of issues, absolutely. The other situation that I've seen is people will go for a job interview and it's a panel interview. And when they get asked a question by someone from the same gender, they respond to that person. But when they get asked a question by someone from the opposite gender, they don't answer to that person, they answer to someone else of the same gender. That will create a lot of issues in my experience. Because at that point, like the red flag goes up. Oh my God, you're going, like, if we hire you, you're going to create so many problems in the organization. So like, again, the simplest solution is we'll find someone else who's going to be easier to work with. Okay, so I'm not saying you have to, but it really makes things a lot easier for sure. Okay, and if you do it, like, just do it in a way that clearly communicates that you want to, you will accommodate as opposed to you expect them to accommodate you, because that part will really create a big challenge. Questions or comments on all this? Make sense to everybody? Okay. I'm sure you all know these issues happen. I mean, it's just life. I'm not saying they're fun to work with, but it's obvious that somebody has to tell the person, because otherwise, they'll keep doing it.